Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining tonight's conversation. My name is Dr. Sherelle Bailey, and I'm the coordinator of our Equity, Access, and Family Engagement Department. Before we begin, I'd like to have our translators introduce themselves.
Բարի երեկո ձեր, շնորհակալություն, որ միացել եք մեզ։ Իմ անունս Վարդուհի Լավյան եմ, ես կրթաշրջանի հայրենի թարգմանիչն եմ։ Եթե ուզում եք այս ներկայացումը լսել հայերենով, ապա chat բաժնից ընտրեք հայերեն տարբերակը։ Շնորհակալություն։
Ms. Park, you have to unmute yourself.
안녕하십니까. 한국어 통역인 제임박입니다. 오늘 저녁의 정보는 한국어로도 제공이 됩니다. 통역을 듣기 원하시는 분들은 대화방에 접속하셔 코리안 제임박 링크를 클릭하시면 한국어로도 들으실 수 있도록 연결이 됩니다. 감사합니다.
Dr. Bailey, we need the links in the chat for the parents to click.
This is what I use to
image
each desk.
Dr. Pardon. Melvin Barrientos, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, we need the links in the chat so the parents can click and access the interpretation.
I assume that's set up by Dr. Bailey.
Bailey, yeah. Buenas tardes, los padres que les gustaría escuchar en español esta presentación. En un momento van a poner un enlace en el cuadro de la conversación, en el chat. Entonces, ustedes pueden hacer clic donde vean mi nombre y el español y nos va a enviar a otro canal donde van a poder escuchar en español. Gracias.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am putting the links into the chat for Spanish, Korean, and Armenian. Again, thank you so much for joining tonight's conversation. We're going to hear from Mr. Barrientos, who is a part of our Student Support and Services Department, and he will explain the TK in kindergarten enrollment, as well as our dual language and magnet programs. Thank you. So stand by. The Korean link is coming in right now.
And I think now you just need the Armenian.
Armenian's coming over. And
so once again, the reason for the links is for those of you who need translation services, you would go to the link provided if you need Spanish, Korean, or Armenian.
Okay, right. Mr. Barrientos.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening. Thank you for being with us here today. Barduhi, I think you have to go to another. Let me mute you. Okay. All right. So once again, good evening. Thank you all for being here today. My goal today is to make sure that you have enough information to make sure you have and you understand the choices that you have here at Glendale Unified School District. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start. So once again, my name is Melvin Barrientos, and I am the Student Support Services Coordinator here in Glendale Unified School District. So in Glendale Unified School District, something I like to point out is that we have over 25,000 students, and why that's important, especially with the 20 elementary schools we have for you, is because here in Glendale, we have a growing population of enrollment, whereas in other districts, that is not the case. And why that's important, especially for new families, is because this means that their and you should take advantage of when open enrollment opens and when these applications open and when the deadlines are. And the reason for that is because, especially for enrollment, if you wait till the very end, you may be sent to another school that is not your home school. So my goal today is to make sure that you have all the information needed so you can make, once again, the correct choices, and so you know where to go for what program you are going to apply to. So once again, the goal is for you to enroll early or when the applications open for open enrollment. And in addition to that, so you know which programs you can apply to right now. And if you ever need more information, the GUSD.net website has all of that for you. And then at the end of this presentation, I'll add some contacts with email addresses so you know who to contact in case you have any further questions. And with that, the GUSD boundary includes most of La Crescenta and most of Montrose. There are a few little areas where it may not, because that may go towards LAUSD, but for the majority of it, that's all GUSD boundary. Once again, we have 20 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 5 high schools. So TK is, it's one of those programs that we now have at 19 of our schools. And something to keep in mind for those of you that have students that are between or have the date of birth between September 2nd, 2020 and September 1st, 2021, those of you that have children born between those dates will have children that qualify for TK. And once again, we have it at 19 of our school sites. The only one that does not currently have TK is Keppel. Once again, that is Mark Keppel Elementary School. However, that may change. Everything depends on space and if and how many students apply for the current year to the kinder program. So keep that in mind for those of you who may have siblings or other children that are currently attending Keppel. That is something that may be in the works. However, at the moment and for the foreseeable future, for this coming year, which is the 25-26 school year, we don't have TK at Keppel, but the other 19 schools we do. And I'll discuss some of the programs they have to offer and why that looks different at some schools and compared to others. So once again, in order to qualify for TK, your child needs to be born between September 2nd, 2020 and September 1st, 2021. Something that may be changing next year at the moment is that instead of 24 students to 2 adults in a TK classroom, that's going to go down to 20 to 2. So why that's important for you is because that means that your child will be in the smaller setting, which makes that easier transition, especially for those that are coming from, preschool or from a from coming from home. So it makes it easier for them to transition. TK at the moment is not full day. However, kinder is, and that's something that we'll talk about. And all the schedules at each of the school sites is available on each of the school site websites. So if you ever have questions about the Bell schedule, you can always log on to the district website and navigate to each school, and then you can go to the Bell schedule. All right, so we have kindergarten options as well, and that's at all of our school sites, but that may look different at some school sites compared to others. For those of you that have children born between September 2nd, 2019 and September 1st, 2020, those will qualify for kinder. Once again, September 2nd, 2019 through September 1st, 2020 will qualify for kinder. Something to keep in mind for TK, it's pretty strict. You have your child has to be born between those dates to qualify for TK. The difference is with kinder, I know sometimes parents have discussions with the preschool team, and the preschool team along with you may think that I want my child to have another year, or I want them to have another year of kinder. Normally what happens is you would complete a voluntary TK request form and they would go to TK. I can tell you in the whole district last year, we had about only 8 to 9 parents complete that form. And the thing about that form is we don't really process that until the summer after we see how much space there is. And some of those parents, when we say, there isn't space at your current school site, they then just say, we're going to keep our kid in kinder. But those are discussions that you and I can have personally and after, once it gets closer to the time when you start making your decision. So we have 3 different programs. We have the English only elementary program that is pretty much at the majority of our school sites, except for Franklin. We have elementary magnet schools, which are Keppel. I'll discuss that in a future slide. And then we have the DLI programs. Some of you may know this term, and some of you may have heard the term FLAG, which was a Foreign Language Academy of Glendale, but now it has been changed to dual language immersion. So for some of you, once again, that have older kids, you may have heard both the terms, but they mean the same. So what is the English only program? Once again, 100% of the instruction in this program is in English. It definitely focuses on the California content standards, and it's available to any GUSD resident. In addition to that, enrollment is based on where you live in the GUSD boundary, and very important for those of you who have questions about enrollment. That begins on the 18th of February. Once again, on the 18th of February, I'll have another slide with important dates, so you can screenshot it or take a picture of it. But the reason that is important, because those of you who already know that you're going to apply at your home school, and you're not going to complete like a DLI or a magnet application, you would go ahead and go complete your enrollment at your home school. And a lot of these schools have appointment-only systems to make it easier for you. You would complete the enrollment packet online and then schedule an appointment with the school directly. So when and where should you enroll? So once again, enrollment at the English programs open up on February 18th. You would go on the district website if you don't already know your home school, and you would go to the school finder, and it will tell you based on your street which one is your home school. And after you find that out, you would go to your home school and complete enrollment. As you can see, we have one category, we have another one at the bottom, especially for Cerritos. If you live in the Cerritos boundary and Cerritos is your home school, you do not have to complete a DLI or magnet application. You will just go to Cerritos and complete the enrollment. However, for those of you who do not live in the Cerritos boundary and you want to go to Cerritos, then you would complete a magnet application, and that is already open. So as you can see, Balboa, Cerritos, Columbus, Dunsmore, Fremont, Glen Oaks, Jefferson, La Crescenta, Lincoln, Mann, Marshall, Monte Vista, Mountain Ave, Muir, Valley View, Verdugo, Woodlands, and Artie White. You can go directly to the school site, or you can go online and start completing the enrollment as of February 18th of next year. For those of you interested in Cerritos, Edison, Franklin, and Keppel, that would be through the magnet or DLI application, which opened as of Friday. And then for Franklin, something to keep in mind, they do have a TK program. However, that is an English only program for TK. And just because your child may be admitted to the TK program at Franklin, that does not automatically guarantee them a spot the following year, because all of those programs are language programs which you would have to apply for. What is a GUSD magnet school? So each of the schools have a themed curriculum. Some of them have dual language immersion instruction or programs available, but those will be a separate program. In addition to that, same as the English only, California content standards are taught. Anyone can apply. However, the difference is priorities are assigned, especially for those who have siblings currently at the school site or live half a mile from the school site. Those are your 2 higher priorities. In addition to that, the enrollment there requires an application. So these are for my schools, once again, like Keppel and Edison and Franklin. And the lottery determines the placement. That lottery will take place later in February, and I'll go ahead and give you that date as we progress through this presentation. So which schools are the magnet schools here at GUSD? We have Cerritos, which the emphasis is on the coding. And I went to a presentation or a showing 2 weeks ago, and students in TK are already getting the introduced to the coding curriculum. And what that shows you is that, you know, they take it very seriously, and they even present, or they show and demonstrate what they're working on. So it's pretty cool to see how they integrated within all of the classrooms. So, and then at Edison, you have both the advanced tech magnet, and then you have the Spanish DLI. With Mark Keppel, the emphasis is on the performing arts, and they also have a Korean DLI program. And then Benjamin Franklin is a language magnet, and they have French, German, Italian, and Spanish. And I like this illustration because it kind of gives you a better idea of the pathways we have here at GUSD, and what happens to your child as they transition from elementary to middle to high school. So for those of you that can see, Cerritos transitions and they automatically go to Roosevelt, which then have the option, depending on their location, to go to GHS or Hoover. And then those that are at Edison, if they're in the English only program, those students go to Roosevelt, which then go into Hoover. And then for those in the Spanish program, they automatically are sent to TOE, which are then sent to Hoover. And then at Franklin, if they're in the German program, they go to Roosevelt, which then go to CV for high school. The Spanish students also go to Roosevelt, which may then go to Hoover. And then you have French and Italian that both transition to TOE and then to Hoover. And then Mark Keppel, which goes to TOE and then Hoover. Something to keep in mind, all three of those schools, Cerritos, Edison, and Franklin, go to the 6th grade, and Keppel only goes to the 5th, which means that those students transition to middle school in the 6th grade, where the other three schools, they transition in the 7th grade to middle school. And for those of you who don't live in the GUSD area, what happens is you just have to complete a permit, an inter-district permit, March 1st. However, you would still follow the same pathways. And then for those of you who live in Glendale, but may live in a different area of Glendale, that maybe one of these schools would not be your home school, they would still transition to that middle school based on the designated pathway. So what is the dual immersion program? It's something to keep in mind is that at least 50% of the instruction is in the target language, and that's for our Armenian program, Japanese, and Korean. They start with 50-50 instruction in kinder. And once again, the California content standards are taught in the target language and English. Anyone can apply, but priorities are assigned similar to the magnet. In addition to that, in our other programs like Spanish, German, Italian, and French, those are 90% in that language, and then 10% in English as they first start off. And enrollment requires an application, which once again has opened up as of Friday. And then the lottery determines the placement. The goals of the DLI program are to make sure that your students advance and have that, and are able to have the academic excellence in both languages, and to cultivate an understanding and appreciation for cultural diversity. And what this looks like at each site is different. And something to keep in mind is, for example, at Edison, where they have the Spanish DLI program, they observe the Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. Whereas if your students are in a different school that does not have the Spanish DLI program, they would not observe it. Same thing for our schools that have the Japanese and Korean. They tend to focus on the cultures and celebrate the different days that they celebrate as well. And the big important one is to make sure that we develop, or your child's develop, an intellectual flexibility, once again, because knowing two languages increases their cognitive ability. And in addition to that, it develops, the goal is to always to make them biliterate, which means making sure that they have a high level of proficiency in both the English and the target language. This may look little on your screen, but what this is this shows where the students go when they're in a designated language. So for example, if your students are at Jefferson and they're in the Armenian program at Jefferson, those students go to TOE and then go to Hoover. And then for those in the R.D. White program, they go to Wilson and then go to Glendale High School. Those at Franklin in the Spanish program, in the French program, go to TOE and then Hoover. Those in the Franklin Spanish go to Roosevelt and then CV. Nope, that's German, sorry. So they would go from Franklin, the German program, to Roosevelt and then to CV. And then those in the Italian program would go, at Franklin, would go to TOE and then Hoover. And those at Dunsmore and Verdugo, new for this year, which was board approved last year, those students at Verdugo Woodlands, in addition to those at Dunsmore, go to Rosemont for middle, and then CV, Crescenta Valley, for high school. Those students that are at Marquepo in the Korean dual language program go to Tow and then Hoover. Those at Monte Vista would go to Rosemont and then CV for high school. And those students that are at Edison transition to Tow and then Hoover. And those at Franklin for Spanish and Muir for Spanish go to Roosevelt for middle, and then depending on the location, Hoover and then GHS. Important to know, because some of you some families like planning where their child is going to go, and then it gives them a better idea of planning for the future, and just making sure they are aware of how things are going to look as they get older. What does the program look like? Something to keep in mind, and what I'd like telling families is that just because your child is in a program, it does not mean that you have to speak that language, right? It means that it doesn't mean that. So I have a daughter who I have in one of these programs, and in the Spanish program, to be specific, we don't speak Spanish at home. However, at the moment, now that she's in the second grade, she's already reading, writing, and doing math. All is her fluency level has increased. And something to keep in mind is if your child is struggling, the teacher will have a conference with you to tell you what you can work on with your child. For example, and it doesn't mean that you have to do it in that language, but the teacher told me I have to work on comprehension with my daughter. So she said the fluency has been great, but something that you can work on is comprehension. So then what that looks like is you would ask your daughter, after reading a paragraph, tell me about what you read, and it would be in that language, in the target language, so it would be in Spanish. And something to keep in mind is that the teacher does not mix the languages, especially in the kinder. So the way that looks like is when you have even a parent conference, the teacher may ask that you don't bring your child, especially if, let's say they're in an after-school program, keep them there and then pick them up after. And the reason for that is because the teacher will talk to you in English. However, she doesn't want the child to get used to that. So what that looks like for them, once again, is that when they take English or when they have the English subject, they will go to a different teacher. So once again, that teacher does not mix the languages. And then the goal is to have about 50% of the students that are native English speakers and 50% of the target language. So if there is, your child is having a hard time understanding the teacher will ask the student, possibly sitting next to them, can you tell your classmate, what was it that I said? And that enables the child to go ahead and both teach the other child and also to kind of learn both languages. So how do you apply for these programs, the Magnet and the DLI programs? Once again, because the English only programs, you will go ahead and apply on February 18th. But for the DLI and the Magnet programs, it opened up on Friday, and the applications are available by going to apply.gusd.net. Once again, apply.gusd.net. I just want to let you know, at the moment, we have over 620 applications, and this just opened up on Friday. So make sure that you get your application in. If you have not taken a tour of any of the schools that you're interested in, please go ahead and do so. You can do this by going on the school's website or contacting the school. Applications, once again, are already open. And those of you that submit an application between now, November 1st, through January 31st, will be included in the lottery, which takes place in February. And as I mentioned earlier, the priorities that apply are, the biggest one goes to those of you that have current children in that program at that school. Next would be the proximity to the school. And if you're a Glendale resident or non-Glendale residents, would go at the very bottom. And something I didn't mention, but you can apply up to 3 programs. Once again, you can apply to 3 programs. That can be, Edison Spanish, Franklin Spanish, Muir Spanish. The moment you are offered one and you accept it, that will take you off of the other wait list, allowing a family to move up if they're on the wait list. Once again, where you can go to find information or where your homeschool is, you would go to this link, gusd.net/school finder. And what you would need to enroll at your homeschool is a birth certificate, proof of residence for your child, immunization records, and an ID, your ID. And then for those of you that, once again, live in Glendale, if you take part in the DLI or the magnet process and you are placed on the wait list, make sure that you enroll in your home school. And the reason for that, once again, is just to make sure that you have a spot somewhere. Because if you're on the wait list for a DLI program and you don't get offered, and that means your child is not enrolled anywhere. So very important to keep in mind that you go and enroll your child at their home school. And then something important, the permits for those of you who live outside of Glendale and for those of you who want to go to a different school that is not your home school, that opens on March 1st. And it would be the same website at apply.gusd.net. So here are the important dates to remember. You can screenshot it if you would like. Once again, the magnet and DLI applications are open, closes, or those that qualify for the lottery would have to do it by January 31st. And then the DLI magnet lottery takes place February 12th at 10 a.m. Enrollment opens up on the 18th of February, and the intra, inter, and release permits open up on March 1st. To get more information about the dual language immersion or the magnet schools, you would go to gusd.net. You would go to the tab academic programs and then scroll down to dual language immersion or magnet schools. And once again, you can sign up for a tour once you're there. Something that I added to the slide just because I know we have this open, I wanted to go through with you on how to apply for a magnet or DLI program. And very important, once again, you would go to apply.gusd.net. For those of you who have a Gmail or Google email, it's very simple. If you can log in with either your Facebook or Gmail account, and it makes it very simple. Or you can go ahead, if you don't, just enter, you can create an account and go ahead and do it that way. For those of you that have Gmail, it's pretty simple. It's seamless. And then just to make sure when you're in the application or when you log in, you have to, where this arrow is, you have to make sure you're in the correct year. I set it by default to make sure that when you log in, it goes to the 25-26 school year because we still have the 24-23 school year open because we still have families applying for permits for this current school year. So let me go ahead and just walk through an application with you. So after you log in, you would have your students here. You can add each student individually. If you have multiples, it's going to be the same account. You can select the language. If English isn't your primary language, something to keep in mind, this is where you'll see messages that we may send. In addition to that, this is where you would change the school year. So I'm going to apply for my student, which is student. I would go through this application process. The birth date has to match for that grade level. So make sure that you do that correctly. If you're having issues with this, you can feel free to contact us. But for the most part, this is pretty seamless. We only have the DLI magnet applications open for the 25-26 school year because that's the only thing you can apply to. You would agree to this. This is just information for you to know. Once again, pretty simple. You can select up to 3 choices. If your student is a current GUSD student, and some of you are because they may be in a like the fourth, 3rd grade, or if they're in preschool, they have a GUSD ID, you can put that there. You would just complete this information, the address. Go to the next school, the next tab. Once again, this is already pre-filled for me because I did it. You would upload a proof of residence. And then it's up to you if you want to put both parents or if you have one parent. If you put one parent or both parents, you at the bottom for both parents, you can add a second guardian information. It makes it easier, especially if one of the teachers at one of these programs is trying to contact you. That way they have 2 modes to have. And then how you heard about the program. Some of you may have, once again, taken a tour, whatever the case may be. This is where you can select the schools. So once again, you can select 3. I can select the 2 at Edison because I really want to go to Edison. I really want my child to go to Edison because I have another child there, or whatever the case may be. And then maybe I can select another one, or I can leave it at that. If I select the 3rd, or then try to select the 4th, it's not going to let me because you can only apply to 3. I can then rank my choices. I would go to the next screen. Something very important for those of you who currently have children at any of the schools that you're applying to, make sure that you complete this information. You would put the information here, because this is once again, this is one of the highest priorities that you can get when the lottery takes place. And this right here, so the first one was siblings that are currently at the school. This one is for siblings, or if you have other children that were on that same pathway. For example, if they went to Edison and they were in the Spanish program and now they're at Toll, you would put that here. This is if your child speaks another language, Spanish, Armenian, Korean. And the reason for this is because if they're kinder or first grade, we at the district office give them a fluency test to see if they are, because that puts them in a different pool when we do the lottery. So if I put yes, on the next screen is going to ask me for the language. Make sure you read that information. I would put Spanish. And then this would be if they speak a 3rd language. I can put yes or no. I'll put no. And then this is where it lets me select a appointment date. You would get an email confirmation after. It doesn't let you move forward if you don't. I'm just going to change this to no at the moment. So when I select no, because maybe your child may not speak another language, it's going to take you to the signatures. Just make sure you read each of these. It's pretty important information. And then after that, you save, continue, and submit, and that's it. That's as simple as it is to apply for one of these programs for your child. So I'm going to go back to this screen. And then these are just some of the frequently asked questions. What is the process if I live outside of GUSD boundary? You would still apply at apply.gusd.net. And then after the lottery takes place, you would apply for an inter-district permit. And then how many programs can you apply to? Once again, it's 3. And then, I'll go to the next one. Is there a priority for families that apply early to the lottery? No. As long as you apply between November 1st and January 31st, you will be and participate in the lottery. It's just why we tell you to do it earlier is just because that allows your application to be in there. And in case anything changes, like your address or whatever the case may be, we can go ahead and update that. So very important that the address that you apply with is the same address that you enroll with. And the reason for that is for several reasons, but the biggest one is to make sure that because you get a priority based on that address, and if you don't live at that said address, then that would change the priority, and that would allow the other family that may live closer to get that position. So I'll just go ahead and go through these. These are just flyers that are going to be sent out and have been posted on the social medias. And once again, as you can see on the Spanish, 90% of instruction is in Spanish, starting in TK and kindergarten, 50% for Korean, 50 for Japanese, 90 for Italian, 90 for German, 90 for French, 50% in Armenian. And then very important, these are the contacts that I told you I would give you, with Dr. Hung being the contact for any, especially Franklin questions. If you have questions about an intra-district permit or inter-district permit, Elena would be for intra, Melissa, Ms. Toombs would be for inter. And then if you have specific questions about the schools or the language programs, it would be depending on which program. So for Japanese is Miss Aya Taylor, for Korean is Miss Eunice Choi, et cetera, et cetera. So you can screenshot that just so you have it all in one spot. And they also do tours. So if you want to contact them about tours, go ahead and send them an email. With that, at this moment, if you have any questions, this would be the time to ask.